We also took that guest review data and using this toolset Joffrey, this little dude that we've built in the front end there, we've now fed all this guest information inside of this unit. And what it does do is it tells us all of what Adrian's experiences have been with us. And it's using all the information from TripAdvisor, Booking.com, everything.
From Hotel Tech Report, it's Hotel Tech Insider, a show about the future of hotels and the technology that powers them.
Today we get to hear from Jose Suarez, the Director of IT for The Capital, a South African company which operates hotels, apartments, and resorts. And in our conversation, he shares how his software development team builds their own functionality on top of an off-the-shelf PMS. After listening to this episode, you'll be inspired to rethink how your hotel uses data and how AI can enhance your guest experience. Well, thanks so much for being here, Jose. Great to have you on the podcast. Really appreciate you taking time out of your day to speak with me. To start us off, I would love to hear a bit about what you do and about your organization.
Well, first off, thanks, Adrian, for having me on the podcast. It's really an honor to chat about what we're doing. I'm Jose Suarez. I'm the IT director for the Capital Hotel Group, situated in South Africa. We're a chain of hotels, apartments, and resorts located across the nation. My principal role is basically to look after, well, at least by my colleagues' standards, is to look after absolutely everything that has an electrical current going through it. So from the computers sometimes down to the toasters, but really it's leading and driving innovation and change with the group. I'm not a hotelier by trade, never intended on being in the hospitality space, but I found myself here and I found quite an explosive and immersive technology-rich environment. So it's been a heck of a journey and a good experience coming into the space and really coming into a group that allows the capacity to do and explore things and fail and succeed at the same time. We've got quite a dynamic group. We cater to a very corporate clientele or client base, offering packages for long stays, a lot of conferencing, a lot of eventing. So you can imagine these are spaces that are bustling with 400 or 500 people, conferencing, video streaming. Then it's got the play aspects from the resort side for families, to going up into their rooms, experiencing TV, entertainment, musicians. And you can understand, as we do in that space, you've got to do everything there from a technological perspective to be able to provide what people expect and then what they don't expect. The things that surprise them and go, wow, that's incredible and that's amazing. And I think we're seeing a lot of those, with the way technology is shifting in the space, we're starting to have the opportunity to explore those moments more so, at least than in the past.
What would you say is the most critical technology partner that you work with right now?
It's such a difficult question to answer because there's a critical path through the business, right? And that really is find the customer, serve the customer, and find out what happened. So to corner it down to one, I really, really struggled. And ultimately, and I think, at least for me, the PMS, it plays such a pivotal role. And obviously it goes without saying that without it, no one, you can't manage your bookings, you can't manage your operation, you can't, do what it is that the business needs to do. But really, it's the cornerstone of absolutely everything. It's one of the pieces that I must say, as I came into the space, I battled with understanding why a lot of the PMSs seem to be where they were from a legacy perspective. I came from fintech and we were over here and doing things over there. And then all of a sudden I arrived and I'm like, but guys, we've moved past this. We don't install things on premises and we don't, have things plugging into things. And that was a big shift. And obviously making sure that we made changes and moved into cloud. So for me, really, the PMS's ability to function on basic operational levels, right? Basic operational levels being run smoothly, capture the guest information at least amount of friction, be able to have the insight into see what's happening from the day, and then be able to manage my rooms and sell them. Without it, everything else fails. Everything else becomes a moot point because you can have the most elaborate RMS, you can have the most wonderful booking engine. we all know all roads lead back into Rome, which means if that's failing, you're done and buried.
I liked how you broke down the guest journey there, like the booking phase, the pre-arrival phase, checking the guest in, and then figuring out what happens after the stay. Can you walk me through how you use technology in each stage?
Absolutely. This was my favorite thing. So for me, and really coming into it, everything is about obviously the guests and what the guest experiences. And when I came in, we didn't have much that engaged with the guest upon this journey. And we looked at a couple of bespoke solutions and integrating. And the conversation, the argument we had, and I said, guys, let's control this narrative. Let's not go now and get a third party because they're going to do it the way that they do it for everybody else. And that there's one shoe doesn't fit all scenario. It really applies. So for us, we built this guest layer of our own, and we built it from the ground up and built a data orchestration layer and plugged on top something that would allow us to obviously engage with the guest throughout the journey. So, coming in, you're making your booking, we're communicating with you there. We actually start the communication link when you arrive on any of our digital assets like the website. So there's already a chat component going through that. You arrive, you make your reservation, we start to communicate with you. You come do your digital registration, the reg cards capturing the ID documentation, that gets pushed into obviously our system. And key there was obviously, talking back to what I was saying to you right about the PMS and the data. And I think we'll maybe get an opportunity to touch on it a bit later because I think no one can say it enough. Really, what's happening in that central hub there and the purity of that information when the PMS needs to be that player is critical. So having that component that sat above and helped the guests bring in their information, and two, the staff, front desk, back office, be able to extract that information was vital. And that will go through the entire journey. And key to that, obviously, is that obviously we'll look at you through your journey. We'll communicate with you through your journey before your arrival, during your stay, after your stay, for an opportunity to understand what's happening and for us to obviously be able to communicate to you, upsell to you, etc., find out how your stay was. But vital to that was not having another system. This was the magic ingredient, was we actually decided to kind of build it into the PMS. So we hijacked our PMS and we brought it actually in like a Trojan horse. The staff are sitting there having this rich engagement layer, and that's the most, the magic ingredient there, which creates the super interactive journey for the guests and the staff, and being able to attach information in between and talk between and share between departments is really, really, really cool. And we've even started to bake in payments and being able to pre-authorize and do a lot of fancy stuff on top.
So it sounds like you've done a really interesting thing, which is not solely using a vendor and not solely building something from scratch yourself. You've taken a PMS off the shelf and built something around it. So it's like this hybrid system. Am I understanding that correctly?
It's a nasty word, is like a Trojan horse. So we took a solid PMS and then we built something in because I found that, look, we still use it. I mean, if I talk around the systems, I mean, we've got up to, our stack is about 30 different software applications and vendors, 10 of which we've built ourselves. And all of this has been woven together. So you still have the PMS and you still have this component talking to everything around it. So we didn't build everything. We can't reinvent the wheel. All I really found was that the hot switching between, whether you're on a bunch of SaaS platforms and switching between tabs, as soon as you start doing that, the staff don't want to do it. They're reluctant. They want to stay inside the PMS and be able to do everything inside of the PMS. And that was, I feel, a pivotal moment there is let's keep them in there and suck all of that stuff in there and literally, make the PMS perfect. Make the PMS do what it needs to do and help you engage with the guest, feed that information back. And then we even started to feed it into it suggestive narrative from obviously artificial intelligence, which is reading from a bunch of inputs and suggesting those things back to the staff, which is really, really cool.
I'm curious, how do you decide which features to build versus which features do you lean on a vendor to provide? Like payment processing, for instance, or upsells. How do you decide what to build from scratch versus what products to use off the shelf?
So it's a good question, and one that I'm going to be honest with you, and my executive will kind of support this statement, is that I'm quite naughty in that sometimes what I'll tend to do is want to build them myself because I'm quite excited and I think I can sometimes do a better job. But most times what typically happens is we try. We will pull something off the shelf, we'll try, and we'll try to get it to work. And where it fails, again, this is exactly where I'm talking about this one component. We're playing in the gap. So we're looking, we're going, there's a gap here. It's not fulfilling what we need to do. So it's going to be easier. Ironically, and most people say that's not really, because now you built something, you have to maintain that, you have to keep innovating in it, and that becomes expensive. But in certain areas, and again, coming from that software development background, it just felt a lot easier, and it has been a lot easier for us. And we've had a lot more success in building those areas ourselves. So to answer your question is, when do we decide? Is when what we're after isn't exactly what we need. And I think that tends to be a lot of the problem, even when it comes to PMS. So much functionality inside of there, and it's really too much sometimes, and not enough of what you often need. And I always compare it to, and I always used to have this analogy to Microsoft Word. And I always say to everybody, everybody uses Microsoft Word, but I bet you that most of us use maybe 10% of what it's capable of doing. Bold a few things, underline a few things, and write a couple of sentences. And that's the same thing. So I would rather build something rich with features that'll work very well and streamline the business.
Can you tell me a bit about your team structure? Do you have a team of full-time engineers building these products and maintaining them for you? Do you use contractors? What does that setup look like?
So we do. When it started, it was myself and one, how the story goes. It's me and one guy, we went on a mission and we started building one thing and then another thing. And then eventually the team built out and built out and built out and built out. What we didn't do was get everybody local. So we offshored and built the team offshore. It was more viable for us. And now we've started to build some key members of that development team locally in South Africa, just purely from a risk perspective. So the team is full-time, our software team, and the structure is pretty flat. And in fact, it's not just about the IT department, the development. The business itself is very much around a flat structure. We aren't into having managers who manage, because it becomes an inefficient scenario. So it is a flat structure. And the same thing gets echoed out when it comes to the development. We've kept to a tight bunch of guys and girls and everybody. And we've been able to, because of that small unity, pump out quite a bit of software. Then a large organization would be, my previous company, we had 250 developers. And sometimes I jokingly look at it and I say, guys, we do more here than I managed to do in a business of that size. So it really is a thin structure where let's have a problem, let's discuss how we're going to solve it, come up collectively with it, go into a rapid process of trying to get an MVP out, test it, fine-tune it, deploy it, and let's go. Get the feedback, bring operations into the whole cycle and have that without having the levels of complexity. And I think the other side of it is, unlike a service provider that has to provide the software solution to multiple hotel chains across the world, and work with all the legalities and issues, we don't, which means that we're able to really just hone in on what needs to get done and then move forward. So in some regard, that puts us at advantage. The disadvantage is that the more we build and the more complex it gets, now we have to keep looking over the shoulder and going, guys, we can't build that because we've got, 52 other things we need to keep looking after. That's kind of the trying to find a balance there so that we've got a harmony between building too much into stack, whereas opposed to we should be working with other vendors to enrich the environment and not just build everything ourselves. I mean, when I came in, I said to the guys, I wanted to build a PMS. I was like, what is this PMS thing? I'll build one. Let's do it. So it sounds like the easiest thing in the world, Not really.
Could you tell me about one product or feature that you've built that had a really impactful result on the business?
Absolutely. So I've got a couple. If we go back so I've got these very corny names, I warn you. So when it comes to naming products in the business, we give them corny names because it just helps us group them together. So we've got this thing called Joffrey, and we lovingly named him after that Game of Thrones character because it was exactly at the time that he was, remember the little blonde prints. The introduction of that was really what we did was baked it into the PMS. And what we found were two things. We were having an issue tracking revenue moving through and attributing it to the sales team. So in other words, they've got corporate clients, etc., and that goes through linked rates, linked profiles, corporate agreements, etc. And when it gets booked, it obviously needs to follow specific clients have to be booked under specific conditions in order to attribute that revenue appropriately into the business, and obviously then commissions and the rest of it. So it becomes quite a complex thing. And the problem is, as you'll know, I mean, in the space is that you rely on so many components there. Depends on where that booking's coming from, right? It's being done over the phone. It's being done by an email. It's being done at the front desk. It's been done electronically. That data needs to all flow through one place and then be able to report onto it. So what Joffrey component allowed us to do is to actually build in SOP logic straight in natively to the PMS, so that whilst this information is flowing in, it's actually suggesting steps to the staff to correct it back to what it should be, so that the tracking of the revenue can go into a real-time phase. And that whole process of being able to do the production reports for that revenue for the sales team typically takes anywhere from a full month, sometimes even further if there's been problems. And we're getting quite good at it now, shaving it down to almost being done within a week to a couple of days. So that makes a massive impact. And the flip side of it as well is that when we look at bad profiles, right? We went from having a 20 to 30% accuracy to a 92% accuracy on the profile information coming in, because purely what it's doing is it's not allowing you to make duplicate. It's not allowing you to enter in false information. Simple steps. But again, having that uniqueness that we can offer and build it specifically for our SOPs means that it doesn't have all these other rules that has to cater for every other hotel group, just ours. And it speaks a language. And when it doesn't work, and I think this is what people have loved, when it doesn't work, and you were asking me, how do we get the feedback from the teams? WhatsApp. So you've got these guys literally sitting there. We've created these WhatsApp groups, and this feedback, a little bit chaotic, but I get now how hotel staff work. I get how hotel people work. They don't have the time to go and draft you an email and take you screenshots and tell you what happened here and record you a screencast. They'll jump on their phones. They'll take me 2 or 3 photos. They'll put it in the group. It'll go to the team. Tickets get created. We solve the problem. 2 days later, it's working. Not 3 months, not 6 months, and that's, I think, hugely the advantage that we have in that area there. So that's been one real big success win there for us.
What are you doing with AI?
So that's the next exciting thing. So we've got these really cool vendors that we work with, one of them being guest review. And one of the components that we've baked in there, well, there's two aspects that I really love that we've done with this. Okay. First one is on the review side. So what we've fundamentally done is we've taken the guest review information that comes from the business. And what I found was there sometimes is a lot of information. They've got a phenomenal tool set, but what we're trying to do let's take it from an IT perspective, is be able to tear through thousands of reviews. So if I take just the December period, we were in peak. I had, 4,000 to 5,000 reviews, in a couple of weeks that I had to sit and go through. And as you can imagine, I probably didn't do a very good job, right? I'm a human being and I probably didn't do a very good job, and I did my best effort. So we've done 2 things with it. One, we've created a model that goes through all the reviews, learns from all the reviews and learns from all the data. It focuses, because we've built it for our POC just for the IT team to start with, and it drills down through all the reviews, looks at problems, and it starts to create tickets and it starts to funnel them. But the nice part is it takes all the information from the PMS. So all of a sudden, an IT team gets a ticket to say this guest on this date in this room experienced the following problem, ticket gets generated. So now what you've done is you've bypassed, the 4,000 emails, and you've honed in the ones that you need to, and you've already sent them out before, the moment that ticket has landed in the mailbox, which is very cool. So we're running with it with an IT, and obviously the natural next step is we're going to start feeding into housekeeping, into facilities, into the rest of it. Okay. The other side of that is then we also took that guest review data, and using this tool set, Joffrey, this little dude that we've built in the front end there, We've now fed all this guest information inside of this unit. And what it does do is it tells us all of what Adrian's experiences have been with us. And it's using all the information from TripAdvisor, Booking.com, everything. It's feeding all of us and saying, what were your last couple of experiences with the capital? What were the elements? And it doesn't make you sit there and go through all the information. It's actually just telling you specific things that you need to hone in to make Adrian's experience that much more enjoyable. It also looks at the room that you're going to be placed into, and it looks at previous past experiences and also tells you what other people did or did not like and what you should then obviously combine that in together. We inject that straight in to the PMS. So whilst you're sitting there literally looking at this and you walk into the front desk, it's already prompting you. That was something we thought very cool. Okay. And it's all happening at a relatively real time, native experience inside of the PMS. Okay. And that's on the guest review side. And as you can imagine, we explore a lot of different models, a lot of transfer learning, and there was a lot of computation on it, but not as bad as the other project. So our other project was looking at phone calls coming into central reservations. And there, what we did is we hooked into the PABX and started to process the audio phone calls coming in and turn that into actual information. That information then gets broken up into a whole bunch of categorical data. That categorical data then gets fed back into the central reservations team so that they can actually see who's performing from a reservations perspective, who's not performing, how are they adhering to scripts, etc. And more importantly, it starts to actually suggest and tell you, where are you missing opportunities? People are asking for this. There's more conversations around that. So that's another little tidbit there that's quite cool. And then the next step there is obviously being able to take those conversations and then mix it in with the historical information that we might have on a guest and be able to then real-time prompt that back to the central res team whilst they're taking a phone call. Yeah.
Another theme that I hear from other hoteliers is using data to create more personalized experiences. What does personalization look like during the stay experience for you?
I suppose it goes beyond knowing someone's name. I think is always a great start. The next component that we've even battled with a little bit is language. Language, I think, is probably one of the most key ingredients to personalizing someone's stay. When you live in a country that's got 11, I think it's 12 official languages now because sign language became an official language. That's something that we fast need to get into the fray. We've been very hyper-focused on, we do service an international market, been easier for us to obviously talk mostly in English. But personalization, it's understanding that guest. It's understanding the guest and not just understanding the name or understanding the language, but understanding the stay, understanding what they want. That really creates, it's nice if you rocked up there and I'm Portuguese by descent here. So if you spoke to me in Portuguese, probably a miss because I was born in South Africa and I'm an English speaking first, but you understand someone who does speak it, addressing him and those things, but understanding what they enjoy out of a stay. So it goes to talking to the guest review component is understanding what they didn't like and not necessarily focusing on it and saying, oh, I know last time the Wi-Fi was horrible, so we've really, improved, but moving them in a way that they can see. I prefer it that way. It's not obvious in your face that we're trying to do these things, but we understand who you are as an individual, either based on a positive experience or based on a negative experience, and we keep pushing you towards that better experience. That's really what personalization for me looks like, and I think where it really becomes super efficient for somebody or for a stayer, for a guest, yes.
I would love to hear if there's anything on your roadmap that you haven't implemented, but maybe it's something you're interested in doing in the future, or perhaps a really exciting product that you've seen in the market that is on your wish list.
We're talking about PMSs, right? And I came out of the banking space, and the banking space really suffered from a very similar problem. And that it was, you've got a super hyper technical environment built on a somewhat old foundation, and I've been following one particular PMS, which is Cloudbeds, and I really love what they've been doing because the one component that I find to be the wrong way of doing it purely because of the overhead that it creates is the guest data. So every single vendor that hops on has this galactic battle over who's going to manage, is it me CRM? Is it you PMS? Or is it the upsell tool? Who's going to manage that guest data? And fundamentally, it should be there should be one originator. When you look at an ERP, same concept. When it comes to your financial data, it sits in one location. It should sit in one location. The same should speak, about your PMS. So really, I love what they're doing there by bringing that CRM component natively inside, being able to provide, not leaving the PMS to go and do functions, I think is where the secret sauce comes in. The only failing that I've seen in that movie before is when vendors try to become the master of everything, the jack of all. Very rarely do they excel in those areas. And CRM is, it's not just, I know most look at it and they go, CRM is just a database. It's not just a database. There's so many layers of complexity to it, and there's so many aspects to it when you bake in the marketing components, the sales activities, etc. But I do love that concept. So for me, it's really the PMS acknowledging that I've really got to be good at getting that data, holding that data, and exposing that data in a secure, obvious manner, because there's the next complexity, and we didn't even touch on the security side of things. And, that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother podcast. But I would really love to explore along those lines. I would really love myself even to see if we bring in some of those areas, the smartness of having a guest data inside of there and being able to look at pattern and look at those experiences that a guest, so as an example, a Valentine's or an anniversary, etc. The PMS understanding it, being able to use generative AI to create some kind of marketing message that immediately fires off without you having to layer in all of these things on top from other systems. That is very efficient. That is very, very cool. Or just being so good at holding that data that the tool that you're using to manage your marketing doesn't own the CRM data. You understand? It doesn't own the client data. It merely speaks to what's in here because it's so solid. And I haven't seen that yet because it's always been about this exchange here. It's either a one-way exchange or a two-way exchange. And whenever you have that, there's this level of disparity that creeps in. I mean, we've done it. We built our middleware to be able to talk to all these components. So when I was talking about that integrated ecosystem, we've got 30 platforms. That was one of the vital pieces here, is keeping inside of this. So I'd like to see it become, the PMS becomes a really good custodian of that information and really help shape with intelligence, shape that data and have very sharp two-way interfaces between the platform or themselves bring it in. But we even went and shopped for a different CRM. We didn't go for anything inside of the hospitality sphere. We went and shopped and played around with Freshworks and HubSpot and the rest of it because we just felt that those products were just so much more mature in those areas, and they're not purpose built for hospitality, but you could tweak them so nicely. And they had such accessibility from APIs and all the elements that you could latch on. So that's really, I think, another component there is just, I'd love to play around, and maybe there's a PMS shift in the future. I don't know. When anybody in an IT role at a hotel group or a hotel talks about shifting a PMS, they get more gray hair. I'm actually only 21, this gray hair from 1 year working in the
Last question. I always like to leave a contentious one for the end. What would you say is one thing you believe about technology that your peers or competitors might disagree with?
I still feel that we are fighting the past. That's the biggest we're building. And maybe I haven't felt enough from sufficient hotel groups to give a much broader opinion, but I still feel that we are in this process of trying to build technology, not everybody, but mostly trying to build technology that was designed to satisfy very old ways of doing things. And as much as we advance them, we're adding all these layers of complexity onto a process that needs to, at its core, be relooked at. And you've got your disruptors who come in, okay, and they change the status quo. And the reaction that the hospitality staff gets is, this is great. because it's not the way that, this doesn't work. The thinking and the way that it gets approached with is, this is the way we've always done it. I can't remember where I heard it, but I was at a talk once and someone was comparing, there was this old story of a mother and a daughter, and they were talking about it was a roast turkey or a roast lamb or something. And they keep cutting the sides of this roast to get it into the oven, right? And the daughter asked the mom, why do you keep cutting the sides off? And she goes, well, I don't know, it's your mother did it. Your grandmother did it, so I did it. So then she goes to the grandmother and asks the grandmother, why do you cut the sides off? And the grandmother says, well, your great granny did it, And eventually they get to the answer. She goes, well, back then the oven was this size, so we had to cut the sides off, and I kind of feel the same thing sometimes, we did it this way. We've always done it this way. And what we're trying to do is build incredible technology to do the same thing. Now, you asked me to give you something. Now, I don't think that holds true for everybody, but I do think it is a component that plays a role in taking us forward. And when it comes down to building, I'm not picking on PMSs. I love PMSs. I think there's a lot of them out there that are phenomenal. But I think the overhead of building a PMS is tripped up in the fact that it's got to come in with all these features. And let's go back to that statement I made to you about Microsoft Word, where all I need to do is write a couple of lines, bold something, underline, and click save.
Well, thank you so much, Jose. It was really great talking with you. I'm excited for all of our listeners to hear your episode. Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. You too.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to Hotel Tech Insider, produced by HotelTechReport.com. Our goal with this podcast is to show you how the best in the business are leveraging technology to grow their properties and outperform the concept by using innovative digital tools and strategies. I encourage all of our listeners to go try at least one of these strategies or tools that you learned from today's episode. Successful digital transformation is all about consistent small experiments over a long period of time. So don't wait until tomorrow to try something new. Do you know a hotelier who would be great to feature on this show? Or do you think that your story would bring a lot of value to our audience? Reach out to me directly on LinkedIn by searching for Jordan Hollander. For more episodes like this, follow Hotel Tech Insider on all major streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music.